Well, good evening. Hello, beautiful people.
Hi, hello.
Feels like we didn't have that kind of chat. Guys, we've got some room up the front. If you'd like to come forward and get cosy, you're more than welcome to stay where you are with the Canades. But if you'd like to come forward, we've got plenty of room up front. We want you to be comfortable because thank you. Thank you for coming along to this auspicious occasion. Yeah, there we go. That's it. Let's feel like you're comfortable. Kick your shoes off. Grab the doona. Isn't it fun when you grab the doona and the pillow from your room and bring it to the couch? It's like a special occasion. It's fun. I think it's fun. Here we go. Get comfy, everyone. We're going to do all of the formal and informal stuff together in one block. So we're not going to go out and watch the fireworks in between. We're just going to... Did you organise fireworks? Later. Right. We'll do that at the end. But folks, my name is Sam. I'm from Hot 91 here on the Sunshine Coast. And it was my absolute privilege to receive a message from Lauren to say, hey, I've written a book. Would you come help me launch it? And I thought, yeah, that sounds cool. And then I think I said no. And then, but then I read a little bit more about what you were doing and what it was about, and the importance of the conversation to be kept happening in our community around domestic violence in particular, and also keeping the conversation going that we as people need to be generally kinder to each other. When it comes to this, and to by way of background, I have a 16-year-old daughter who is my everything, and I have a wife, still kind of just, who is living with my daughter in Spain as we speak, and they're fulfilling a few lifelong dreams, which I'm incredibly proud of, and I'm incredibly proud of both of them for their efforts. But as a 16-year-old daughter and as a dad of a 16-year-old daughter, I remember, do you remember when the Belgium bombings took place in Antwerp at the airport? And I believe 56 people lost their lives as a result of terrorist attacks at the time. And as a dad of a 9-year-old, at the time we did our best to try and shelter her from the news. I think news and media, in particular radio, was just insidious. And so for me, having a 9-year-old daughter, reading a book to her at night time, hoping that she'd be sheltered from the world, was an important thing. And I remember vividly we read Cuthbert the Caterpillar and Wilfred the Wasp. Great book, one of my faves. And as I'm inverted on our backs reading along, I noticed this particular night she was less focused than normal and probably didn't really give a stuff about the book. At the end of it, I put it down and I said, "You okay, honey?" She goes, "Nah." Probably less spoken than that. She said, "No, father." Probably less Harry Potter than that, but somewhere in the middle, she said no. And the way she said it was she then wanted to explain that she'd been made aware of the Belgian bombings and was concerned. She said, "Dad, why have these people done this in Belgium?" And what do you say to a 9-year-old who's asking you this question? And I could only give her the honesty, which was, I don't know. I don't know why people do the things they do. All I know is that there are some bad people in the world who do bad things, and there are good people in the world who do good things. And I could see her ponder this, and then she came out with a little moment that will live with me for the rest of my days and probably reshaped my life and philosophy, and probably why I said yes to come along tonight, was that she just said, "Well, that's pretty obvious what we've got to do then, Dad. We just got to put more good in than bad. So if the good people do more good than the bad people do, in the end we'll win." Pretty simple, right? But she's right. And so I now look at that as the way of life. From a 9-year-old girl to tell me that all we've got to do is put more good in. There's always going to be bad people doing bad stuff, and as long as there are good people doing good stuff, then I'd rather support them every day of the week. So that's my reason for being here, and thank you for having me, Lauren. Quickly. I'd also like to acknowledge a quick traditional owner of the land, custodians past, present and emerging. We're in the land of the Gubbi Gubbi people, and we love and respect all the work that they do, the stories they share, and the history that they have yet to share with us that we look forward to. In the language, Wanya means welcome, so Wanya Nalam here in Malula. Okay, Lauren Trevan,
Yes.
superstar, author, now, an important person in our community for somebody who's keeping the conversation going. So to get things underway for tonight, can I please introduce her? Please make her welcome. She gives us a bit of an insight as to what this world is all about.
Thank you. I hope you can all hear me okay. I just want to say thank you so much to Sam and so much to Ashton. Ashton's going to come and talk about a really important charity called DB Safe Phone. We'll talk about that just after I've done this. But first of all, I've written a few words down, and it's actually a lot of words down that once I started I couldn't stop, and I just find this so important and I'm so passionate about this subject. But I do need to give a small trigger warning that talking about domestic abuse can be upsetting, so I perfectly understand if anyone needs to practice self-care, or I don't know, whatever you need to do. I'm sorry if it does upset you, but it is upsetting, but we do need to talk about it. Okay, so before we introduce my novel to you, I'm like I said, I'm going to talk about domestic abuse, but in particular a insidious type of abuse called coercive control. This type of abuse alone won't show any outward bruises, and until a few years ago most of us had not even heard the term coercive control. And I'd hazard a guess that most people don't truly understand it even now, because it is confounding, but to none more so than the victim experiencing it. So today I hope to shed some light on it and share some of my own lived experiences. But I'd like to begin with a quote from Jess Hill from her award-winning book called See What You Made Me Do. Highly recommend reading it, get it out there. Domestic abuse is not just violence, it's worse. It is a phenomenon in which the perpetrator takes advantage of their partner's love and trust and uses that person's most intimate details, their deepest desires, shames and secrets as a blueprint for their abuse. I'm not going to go too far into statistics tonight, but there is some that we must know. On average, one woman in Australia every week is killed by a current or ex-partner. Now that's murdered by someone who once loved and they trusted. It really is the ultimate betrayal. One of the most recent and local of these is Emily Thompson, who was allegedly killed by her ex-boyfriend and dumped in bushland in Nambour in October of this year. A Herald Sun report on the 23rd of October stated that the man and woman were not known to police and no domestic violence orders were in place at the time of her death. Sorry. There was also Detective Inspector Fadian stated in a News.com article the following day, "This is a good young lady, a good young person that this has happened to, and it's a tragedy." And I really had to ask myself why he felt the need to say that. Why did he have to point that out? Was it because this type of violence is only perpetrated on bad people, unworthy of a safe and loving relationship? Because I don't think so. I think his words were well intended. Because we see a fleeting news article of another woman killed by a man known to her, and we feel bad for a minute before we convince ourselves there's more to the story to suit our own narrative. It's a self-protective behaviour. It's like us here on the Sunshine Coast hearing about a fatal shark attack in WA. We're, outraged and upset for that person, but we're not really worried because it's so far away. It's the same hearing of intimate partner femicide. We convince ourselves that it would never happen to me or someone I care about because we come from a middle-class background, or we come from an upper-class background, or we're too intelligent, we're law-abiding citizens, or we only socialise with good people, or we're great at reading people, and we talk about everything with our children. But the facts are, no profession, no skin colour, no social status, and no amount of intellect can protect a person from a skilled manipulator who is intent on controlling them at whatever cost. Emily was the 38th woman allegedly murdered in Australia this year, according to a poll kept by Destroy the Joint. And in a News.com article on the 25th of October, a spokesperson for the Thompson family stated that Emily was a smart, kind-hearted and loving person, a much-loved daughter, sister, granddaughter, cousin, niece and friend. Emily was only 18 years old. She had been preparing for her Year 12 exams. And Emily had a dress for her formal that she will never get to attend because someone who professed to care about her decided to end it all for her. And we have to ask ourselves why. Because this wasn't a man known to be violent. He's not a convicted criminal. So why? Why does it keep happening? Why are so many people who said that they loved someone killing them? According to a New South Wales review into domestic violence, intimate partner homicides were preceded by coercive control in 99% of cases in their study period. Coercive control is not an incident-based overreaction or an explosion of rage from a person, but rather it is a pattern of behaviour exhibited by a perpetrator with the goal of ultimate domination. So domestic violence does not always leave a bruise, but it always instigates fear. That fear is very real and valid, and it has a slow encroachment. Because if I had been told years ago that I would one day be adjusting my behaviour on a micro level, continually assessing and placating another person to avoid consequences of breaking his unwritten rules, I would never have believed it. I would never have stayed in an abusive relationship because I was far too smart for that. But alas, here I am, and that's actually how I lived for many years. When I met my abuser, he was charismatic and full of charm, a natural leader who towered over me and seemed bigger and better than anything I could imagine. He was kind and loving, writing me adoring messages, telling me I deserved so much better than my ex-boyfriend. He bought me gifts, flowers, holidays, and within a year I'd moved in. I was 21 and he was 30, so already a huge power imbalance. That phase is commonly referred to as love bombing, and that lasted for a year before small things started to happen. It started with him accusing me of affairs. The first time I was interrogated about messages on my phone from an old school friend. The accusations went well on into the night until I was so exhausted I just promised to never speak to that friend again. Losing a friendship just seemed easier at the time, and I actually thought, stupidly, in my youth, maybe then he'd know how much he meant to me. But it didn't help because the accusations of affairs kept coming, and the consequences for me was sleep deprivation and the silent treatment that could last for days. And I was too exhausted and busy defending myself that to question why he was even reading my private messages. And this is the tricky part of living with a coercive controller, because if it was all bad, we would have left. In between those blow-ups, we would be blissful again, like nothing had happened, and I would feel positive about our future. And that honeymoon phase could last for months at a time before another eruption over something I had done wrong. It could be about anything, a phone message or buying the wrong brand of food. It didn't matter what started it. It could even be me accusing him of something he'd done wrong and him flipping the script to make it about me. The point was, it would always last late into the night with him telling me everything I did wrong, whether it be the cleaning, that I worked too little and didn't earn enough, that I didn't satisfy him sexually, that I didn't put lids on correctly, I didn't mop the floor correctly or fold the washing right. And I was so busy defending myself that I didn't realise I'd taken on all the household duties, despite us both working full time. I was always trying to improve myself to make him happy so we could just get on with the good times of our relationship, and I wouldn't be provoking his negativity. I was convinced that I was the problem. The cycle went on, the degradation, consequences, followed by the undying devotion of love and promises of the future that I always dreamed of. It truly is confounding when you're in it. It got to a stage that I was so wary of avoiding his degradation that I spent every minute, every day, measuring, assessing risk, and acting happy for all. The more I adjusted my behaviour to make him happy, the more rules kept appearing. I I started declining invitations to girls' dinners, Christmas parties for work, and general things most people would enjoy without a second thought. Because here is the cleverness of the adept coercive controller. He never outright told me I couldn't do those things. He just made my life miserable every time I did. It wasn't worth it. I ended up spending my time obsessing how to negate his upset. And there was always another unspoken rule of his that I was yet to learn. This went on for years, escalating. The in-between honeymoon periods I once clung to all but disappeared, and his previous love of me turned to indifference.